By the time I get in bed at night, I just want to lay down and hope that nobody wakes me up. And I just don't think that most of us realize that by the time we're parenting school age kids, our careers are in full swing and everybody's finally sufficient enough to wipe their own hindquarters, but they're still not sufficient enough to stop needing you. And that's exactly when most couples start to drift. Nothing went particularly wrong, just everything happened to get busy at once. If you and your partner have started to feel more like really efficient roommates than actual partners, you'll love them. The logistics are covered, but something is just, I don't know, missing. This episode is going to meet you exactly where you are because it turns out this is way more common than anyone talks about, and it takes way less work than you think to start finding your way back to each other. Today, Stephanie Flood, licensed marriage and family therapist, is walking us through exactly when couples tend to hit that wall and why women, in particular, start pulling away from physical affection without even realizing it. And the one concrete thing you can do in the next 24 hours that costs $0 and takes about 20 seconds to meaningfully invest in your marriage. You don't want to skip that part. Hey y'all, I'm your host, Courtney Cecil, and welcome back to the Life Management System. So, this is airing on my 20th dating anniversary, which is also like right around the corner from my 15th wedding anniversary. So, big milestones over here in our house. And I'm just equal parts like nostalgic and equal parts probably pretty surprised, if I'm being honest, that we're actually old enough to hit some of these milestones. But I'm also, of course, proud because Richard is still my best friend. That is not by accident. It's that we work for that. He is still the person I turn to for everything. And I'm also partially impressed because, y'all, it is hard as hell. Marriage is hard. This late stage and like middle, messy middle of life is hard. It's just hard when you have two big careers, you have multiple kids. It all just adds up to it's a lot. It's just a lot. And that's why I felt it was so appropriate for this episode to host Stephanie Flood. So, Steph is a founder of Flood of Love, and she is a licensed marriage and family therapist with over 15 years of experience helping couples reconnect, rebuild trust, and reignite intimacy. So, she and her husband have been together for 31 years, married for 24, which is hell of impressive. And then you layer on the fact that they have four kids that are very, very close in age. So they somehow figured this out, which makes her expertise that much more enticing. So her particular shtick, which is what makes me so excited to put her in front of you, is that she helps couples that feel like they're kind of drifting into this more roommate dynamic find their way back to each other. And I feel like that is what I certainly have experienced from time to time, and what I sense from many of my clients and many of the people I engage with online. So, if that is you, you're going to want to stick around for this episode and tune in. So, Stephanie, welcome to the Life Management System.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah.
I love talking about this stuff. So, yeah.
Okay, Steph. So you've clearly figured something out, and I'm anxious to get to the bottom of like extract all of that good wisdom from you. The fact that you have a thriving, healthy marriage, that you've been able to do that while growing a business and have four kids, that is not by accident. It is not easy. It happens with intention, and that is something that you help bring to other people. So let's set the stage for a second. Life is busy. Like it's very busy for us all. 95% of the listeners are at the same stage in life where we are in right now. It is just a hectic decade, and everybody's feeling at capacity and constantly so hard to keep up. And that is exactly what inspires my listeners to tune in. So it's no surprise that many of those same listeners are probably also saying to themselves, like, yep, I can totally get how easy it would be to unintentionally slip into this more roommate mode with my partner. Not all of my listeners are married. Not all of them are in a heterosexual relationship. Not all of them actually have kids, but most of them fall into the category of married in a heterosexual relationship with at least one or more kids. But all of them are very busy and have some sort of overwhelm. So you have worked with so many couples over the past 15 years. Some of them have been married for decades and they're decades into the relationship. What are some of those earlier signs that a marriage might be turning the corner into some of that more roommate territory?
So that's a great question to kind of start out with because it looks at like, okay, are we even here? Like, what does that mean? And for the most part, and I'm going to generalize a little bit too, because I think my audience is my audience fits your audience perfectly. It's working couples, been together a decent amount of time, got some kids. Like, usually it's the guys that are going to be the first one to be like, hi, hi, what are you doing? Where have you been? I've missed you. Sometimes not saying it quite that delicately. For audience purposes, we will use the PG-ish version of this. So usually you're going to start hearing things like, "Oh, it's been a while. Like, could we, could we do things like this weekend?" Like, you're going to start hearing some of that more often. And then I think for women, what ends up started like core starts happening is there's a thought in your head that's like, oh, I know I should be doing more intimacy with my husband or connecting with him more, doing more stuff just with him. But oh my gosh, there's so much other stuff going on. When am I supposed to, when is that supposed to happen? Because by the time I get to bed at night, I just want to lay down and hope that nobody wakes me up in the middle of the night. And so that's usually where couples start to see it. If I were to say, like, for a lot of couples, the 14-year mark for marriage is usually when most people start to see it. So
Oh,
people talk about the
interesting.
7-year itch. Yeah, that one's there. That one usually has to do more with like the littles. But when you've got like school age kids, you're usually around the 14-year mark and usually moving into your 40s. And like kids are self-sufficient. I use self-sufficient by they can probably wipe their own hindquarters. That's usually where you're at. And that for most couples, that's usually where like, oh, we've really started to drift. Like, because now we're full steam. Like, we've got through the baby phase. We have little kids. They're doing stuff. We've got careers. We've got all these things. And you're gonna start feeling like, oh, it has been a minute, but I don't know what to do about it.
Yeah. And it's ironically also that time in life when most people's careers are like absolutely flourishing. They're taking off, absolute peak earning potential. Their responsibilities are growing. But guess what? So are their home responsibilities. And I always try to politely give my clients or people that are coming up before me a little bit more grounding and heads up on what that looks like because I know when my boys were little, people would look at me and be like, "Oh, wow, you're really in the thick of it." What they were not saying is, guess what? I am too, and it's actually worse. Or you'd hear people say, it doesn't get easier, it just gets different. But what I underappreciated when I heard it just gets different is in my head, I thought they meant slamming doors or eye rolls or my feelings would be hurt because of mean things. And yeah, that sucks. I don't want that. But guess what? That's not what they're alluding to. It's also hard because it takes time, and time is what we are so desperate for more of. And that's what I just didn't fully appreciate until my boys were a little bit older, is that I have so much less time than I ever did when they were younger. Yes, they're self-sufficient now and can brush their own teeth and wipe their own butt, but you know what they can't do? They can't drive themselves around. They are constantly needing my attention. They're constantly needing to process something with me. So, where I used to have the kids' naps or their early bedtimes, now from sunup to sundown, I am fully on with them. And when I get them to bed and I'm walking out of their room at 9:30 to 10, it's time for me to get myself to bed. So, what you're essentially, layering on top of is there is no breathing room in our lives to create space for that when you're already feeling so tapped out.
Yeah, really and truly. And I do have two that drive now, which you would think would actually be helpful, but they're not very helpful because they have determined that they're now going to have their own. Like our oldest daughter has a job in like a dress shop, and so she has this whole schedule. And I'm like, well, can you pick up your sister? She's like, absolutely not. Like, I have a job.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so that wasn't like, okay.
That wasn't part of the deal. You were supposed to be burning. Yeah, I was
Uh,
banking on you helping.
yeah. And so it's funny when they do, like, I really had that moment. Oh, like they're going to drive. It's going to be so much better. It really wasn't. It was just more of like, oh, now they just have an extra thing that they layered into their schedule that doesn't
Yeah.
like help out at all. So all of my kids also played sports because we are crazy human beings. And we were like, you know what? We should layer 4 kids with 4 club sports.
Oh,
And maybe
club
even
too?
yeah, so everybody plays club soccer, or they did at one point in time. So all 4 in club soccer, which also involves traveling. So that means like almost every weekend we were somewhere. And then we later on some cheerleading because obviously that makes sense. And I mean, just legitimately as they got older, yes, you're right. That compounded and compounded and compounded. And one of the strategies that Sean and I really tried our absolute darndest on was to find other times outside of, like, we knew the kids had to be at school, like, for the most part. So we would try and like plan lunch dates as a time to connect because, one, we didn't have to worry about a babysitter. There was way less pressure for us to be able to say, oh, yes, we could do lunch together on Fridays. We usually did it on Fridays because that was our lighter day for both of us. And we could block out 2 hours of time Friday afternoon to just sit and have lunch together. And that was a great way to just make sure that, like, mostly our emotional connection was intact. So
Yeah.
Sean and I have a habit, and somebody called us out on it randomly the other day about how much we talk to each other. It is constant. Like, it is constant talking to one another. We're talking about the kids. We're talking about our parents. We're talking about logistics. We're talking about planning for this and this and this and this. Like, how are you feeling about that? How's that going? That's probably built into me being a therapist. And he's pretty chatty anyway. So those were the 2 secrets, if I had to say, of like making sure that we stayed connected even when all this other stuff was going on.
Yeah, to your point, the logistics part really only comes down to blocking your work calendar.
Yes.
And that's like, for the most part, we don't have to drive anywhere else. We don't have to worry about babysitters. It's just so good. So when somebody comes to you and you're like, I have no time to prioritize my marriage because of all of these things that are swirling around, is something like that, just like talking or carving out time, dedicated time together, the first lever that you encourage people to pull? Or is there some other real trick to the trade?
So I really encourage like small, meaningful connection multiple times a day. So the way that you want to build that in is, did I hug my husband today?
And
Did
like a bit, and
I?
like a chest to chest
Yes.
hug.
Yeah, not just a like, bye. No, full on, did I give him a hug? Gets better if you give them a kiss. Like, yay. Did I rub their arm or like squeeze their arm? Did I ask them like, hey, what was one thing that was really tough today? Did I say like, you know, thanks for taking out the trash. I really appreciate that. So lots of tiny little connective moments. So appreciation, affection, encouragement. Those 3 things keep you guys on the same page. The affection piece is where most people actually start to slide. And moms in particular really start to slide because when you have a lot of tiny humans hanging around you at all times, as you well know, they touch you all the freaking time. You get touched out. And so the last person that you want to have touch you is a grown man who is probably not trying to touch you for like, I just love you.
Yep.
I mean, he does, obviously, but like, there's a little more into that, like touching. So if you can be mindful of repeatedly touching and being affectionate with your spouse, it doesn't have that like massive jarring effect, like when he's potentially asking for a little bit more. So that's where we start. So affection, appreciation, encouragement every single day, small, tiny moments.
I think that it's worth just really illuminating the gratitude piece too, because that is something, if we put ourselves in situations at work when we are constantly selflessly doing things for an organization, many moms also feel like that is exactly what's happening in the home. Like we are constantly serving other people. Moms serve so selflessly. Hell, that is, we brought our kids into the life because of our selflessness,
Mhm.
and sacrifice so much of ourselves because of it. We know how good it feels when somebody takes the time to be like, wow, that was a really great meal. Or, oh my goodness, the house looks fantastic. Or, oh my gosh, you look fantastic. All of those pieces of gratitude fill our cups up. But that's the same type of appreciation that fuels our partners as well. It's just such a basic human need to be seen. And that's part of being seen. It's part of feeling appreciated for what we do is just saying like, hey, guess what? I notice you. So if you ever feel like you're carrying it alone, when you see your partner doing something, one of the quickest ways to incentivize him or her to continue joining you is guess what? It's expressing gratitude. It's really that simple. It's healthy at work. There's a reason that we get anxious when we feel underappreciated for so long. But no, it's not just work relationships that's meaningful in. It's any relationship, but most especially our marriage.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's even practicing that with your children. Like I talk to people all the time, like, well, you wouldn't not hug your kids. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
if you're not, like, we should probably chat a little bit more. But like that's just so natural to us to be like hugging them, especially when they're little, when they get to be teenagers, especially teenage boys, they're like,
Mhm.
but like you wouldn't not hug your kids daily. So we really want to make sure like you're hugging your partner daily because
Mhm.
that's good for you. It creates feel good chemicals, like you were saying, as a woman, like that. Oh, yes, I'm reminded, like, oh, yes, I do find him cute. And yes, this does feel good. And yes, he like, when you have those feel good chemicals going, you actually pay attention more to the good things that he is doing.
Yeah.
One of the biggest traps is that we get into is what our partner isn't doing.
Yes.
Oh yeah. And that is really, really hard to get out of because it's so easy to see all the things that they are doing wrong all the time. Like, and so if we are practicing gratitude, if we are practicing like appreciation towards them, you're more in the habit of like, they are a good human. I chose them for the right reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. So there are a couple things that come to mind. One is that episode 82 that I recently aired with Erin Coop. So in it, she was talking about how when you wake up in the morning, you essentially call attention to this is what I want to experience. This is what I want to say. I am a happy person. I do have abundance. Because when you do that, your brain synapses start firing because they are consciously looking to reaffirm that emotion as you go throughout your day. The other episode I want to link in the show notes is episode 62. That is with a guy named Brian Page. And he specifically works with couples, not in necessarily the capacity you do stuff, but he essentially helps them build systems between the couples that will help them keep their marriage alive by equalizing the home management workload. So that might be of service to anybody. I don't know. If you feel like you need to go deeper there, I'm going to link that in the show notes. But I don't want to miss this part too that you glossed over earlier around just talking, because that is not that hard. Like, even for very introverted people that need to refuel themselves, it doesn't start off that hard when we start dating them because there's so much like the chemistry is there. Do you find that a lot of the couples that you work with end up getting to that point in part because all they talk about is their kids? Like they've lost the ability to really manage more connected conversation?
Yeah. So I hear a lot in my private practice because one of my gifts is asking questions. So I
Mhm.
ask all kinds of random questions. And a lot of the time, couples will come back and be like, I never even thought to ask them that. Or what a great question. Like, can we just borrow that and like ask it every week? I was like, yes, of course. So getting curious. Curiosity about your partner is the number one way to facilitate conversation. So what we tend to do and what you're just talking about is, yeah, logistics for the kids. Here's all the things that we have to do for the kids. Here's all the things that may not, like, is Billy like not doing well in school? Oh God, we have to, get a tutor and talk to his teacher. And like, so we're dealing with logistics a lot of the time with the kids. We're actually not really dealing with who the kids are or how they are for the most part. And so when we get, even if we are still talking about the kids, if we get curious, well, how are you feeling about Billy not doing well in school? Like, what are you worried about? What are you not worried about? Like, what about this? Like, what could I be doing differently, or what could you be doing differently? So when we get curious and we start asking lots of questions, conversation flows super easy.
Especially when you ask a good question, because there is a difference between a quality question and non-quality. So all of the questions that you ask, Stephanie, would lead to something beyond a yes or no, or a good, or a shrug. And I think that's really important. I actually coached my house manager on this a while. She gets anxious engaging with new people. And I keep saying to her, like, Priya, you get anxious because you land in this place of small talk, because people ask questions like, how was your week? Most people respond good. Like, it's when you ask something more substantive that they have to respond to materially, like, what are you looking forward to this weekend? Very different question. It still is very approachable, but it leads to a conversation of substance, because then it allows you to start making connections and be like, oh, you're into this hobby, me too, or oh, I've been so curious about that. So it just opens the doors in ways that a flat question does not. So I think that that's a really important point to punctuate. And if you all are listening and thinking, okay, I still don't know where to take this, I still feel like I need to build that muscle back. And I've had a couple clients that have. One of my go-tos is table topics. Do you know those?
Uh-huh.
I love table topics. Like, they're
Yeah.
so good. We even keep them at our kitchen table. So that way, when we're sitting around the dinner table with the family and the conversation starts to move like more small talky, we're just like, let's just ask one question that we'll all go around the table with and answer like really meaningfully, because it's stimulating and like just continues to drive deeper connection than you're never going to get if you keep the conversation at surface level.
Yeah, it really is really what we want to get to is more around how our partner is feeling about life. Because when you really get how your partner feels about life, then that is the emotional bond that really keeps you going for long periods of time. And thinking that your partner is the same person they were when you probably got married, or even 5 years in, is totally different than the partner you're probably with now. And if you haven't checked back in about like, hey, like, how do you actually feel about this? My husband, I don't know what in the world, he hated olives for a very long time, and for no particular reason, in my opinion, as to why he hated olives. And so I just went with it, and it was like, well, my husband hates olives, right? Last year we were in Greece. The man is eating olives like it's his job, and I like am dumbfounded. I'm like, but you hate olives. He's like, no, I don't. I like tried them like a few years ago, and they're like pretty good. Okay. Like, so I mean, that's just a really stupid example of like assuming something about your partner. I never obviously checked in around it, and he had like some completely different thought process about it. That stuff goes with our emotions too. Like, if they are feeling a certain way about their career, if they're feeling a certain way about the kids are a great one, because the kids change constantly. Like, but if you constantly just think about your child being 4 and now they're 8, like things have progressed and moved on. And we want to keep checking in with our partner about like, oh, well, how does it feel now that they're 8? Like, what are you liking better, or what's harder, or what feels different?
Yeah. Also, it's just such a human need to feel seen and to feel heard. Everybody wants to feel seen and heard. And like, there was this, have you ever watched Moonlight Mile? Most people have never even heard of it.
No.
Okay, so let me paint the picture. Moonlight Mile was, maybe it came out in the early 2000s. Susan Sarandon, Dustin Hoffman, Jake Gyllenhaal, Ellen Pompeo, like, killer lineup for people to have never heard of this movie. but it's also a very dark movie. And I don't mean dark as in like the Joker kind of dark. I mean like there's just not great lighting and the whole thing feels brown. like like physically dark. Very somber, but in it, Jake Gyllenhaal is sitting down with Susan Sarandon's character, and he's like observing this marriage between Susan and Dustin Hoffman's characters. And he's like, I don't get it. And she turns to him and essentially makes the point that, sometimes people just need to feel like have a witness to life. And that's what her husband was to her. It was her witness to life.
Mm.
But I think what she's really saying underneath that is like, I just want to be seen by somebody. And even if that's all that makes sense for us, like that's just such a foundational human need. So if we are committing ourselves to our spouse for better, for worse, sickness and health, then I think just like giving them that basic like human need really can go a long way.
Yeah, yes. And I think the easiest way to do that quite is again to stay curious about them. And
Yeah.
when you get stuck in the, oh, I don't have anything to say to them, like those table topic cards we have them too. We have like a kid version of them. And I think I even remember asking my husband one time, I was like, who at work would you like send off in a spaceship forever? And the response was like dying laughing because we had asked the kids that and it was some child that we were like, oh, we've never even heard of this child. But, just being curious with your spouse and
Yeah.
that takes some of the pressure off you because you don't actually have to answer anything if you don't really want to, but it helps them feel like, oh, they're listening to me, they're getting me, they want that emotional level of connection, which that emotional level of connection is what gets you to the physical connection.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have, for most women, if you do not have that emotional connection with your partner, getting to the physical part is going to be it is
A
really,
leap.
really, really
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. That when we had a ritual when the boys were really little and like going to bed early, napping all the time, that sort of thing, that we would use the table topic cards. We would grab a bottle of wine, we put on music, we'd go out back to right now we have a fancy backyard, but at the time it was just like hardly bare grass because we moved, it was a new property. Like it was just hay here in Charlotte in the summers. But we go out back and listen to music and enjoy a bottle of wine. And we would just ask those table topic questions. We would probably get through 2 questions a night because we would just keep going deeper and deeper. I call it double clicking and like double click on that, double click on that, and just see where the conversation goes. I mean, some of the richest conversations of our entire 20 years together happened through like being facilitated through that and just creating the space for it and being very intentional about making that happen.
Yeah. And I mean, that's what you guys are doing is absolutely, a lot of couples feel, they're like, oh, I got some more work to do, or like we go watch a show. And I don't necessarily poo-poo the watching a show thing or a movie as long as you're sitting next to each other.
Okay.
Like not on the opposite ends of the couch.
Yeah.
Right next
Yeah.
to each other. So
Yeah.
again, we're back to that physical affection. It's much easier to do that if it's already built into like what you're currently doing. But you guys
Yeah.
did something great in terms of go outside, like breathe the air.
Yeah.
Super important to us as humans, which I don't feel like we do enough of. And then, yeah, like have a glass of wine or something that helps you relax. And then, yeah, talk, have a conversation.
Yeah.
That emotional connection is a testament. It is exactly why you guys have lasted as long as you have, because you
Yeah.
wanted to emotionally connect with each other.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And I also I encourage my clients to not feel the pressure, to not like to let themselves diffuse. Like most of my clients are in very demanding jobs, like have very demanding pressure, high pressure jobs, very high achieving women. Like if you need to zone out, then zone out. That's not, it's not that that's not okay, but do that 6 days of the week. Make sure that there's a seventh that you like, maybe it's you do that 4 nights and then one night it's just a night for you. And then one night's a night for your marriage, or, there's just, it doesn't have to be all or nothing to be successful.
Yeah.
So let's move on and talk about conflict for a second.
I was going to say, Sean and I are very good at conflict.
I know, yeah. I mean, it's easy. Like you think about, you think about how, like, when you're just so busy or so tired. I mean, I get really cranky when I get tired,
Yeah.
when you have like little kids, careers, aging parents, like all the things piling on top of each other, conflict will inevitably happen. But what's the difference in your mind and how you characterize healthy conflict versus conflict that's slowly probably eroding that relationship?
Contempt would be the word I would use. So when you start feeling contempt towards your partner, you are in big trouble. Because what you've essentially done, and it is, you're basically running a laundry list of all the things they do wrong and building resentment. And when that goes on for too long, then again, it is very difficult to come back from. Like we were saying,
Yeah.
that bias towards, well, clearly my spouse is a moron. And I was joking as you were trying to sneeze about Sean and I doing conflict really well. Our kids actually tease us. They're like, oh my God, you two fight like you're still in high school. And I am fairly positive that we do. Like we have not grown up at all. And we bicker a lot, which some people would, I had a client that they used to, I would call them the Bickersons, and it was just like this fascinating thing to watch because they would just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And my husband's grandparents were also like that and had been married for 50 years. And what I realized was that type of conflict is actually not terrible. It's totally fine. They're actually just released. They're letting the valve leak on like the little things that kind of irritate them here or there as they kind of go along with life. But it actually resolves instead of building up and building up and building up until there's like, a freaking hurricane of like resentment and anger and vitriol, like that valve released.
Yeah.
So, there's I try to teach couples there's some rules around fighting, around conflict. We don't call names to the best of our ability. We don't use words like always or never because you definitely get into a defensive state the second your partner says that to you, because always and never are very untrue for most humans. And again, like when you're adding in appreciation, it makes contempt really difficult to have. They just don't go together. So you can be frustrated maybe about how they do the dishes, but that's okay. It's okay
Yeah.
for you to express it. I don't particularly enjoy the way you do the dishes, but I appreciate that you've done them. So we're just
Yeah.
going to kind of move along.
And so I come from a culture shaping background and had done that for the past 10, 15 years in corporate. And I also always encourage people when they're giving feedback to their direct reports or somebody else, a peer or even their boss, using the language I feel also diffuses things because oftentimes, similar to what you're saying, Stephanie, around the always or never language, like we are not that black and white as humans. Using the language I feel puts somebody in a place where you're saying, this is just the emotional impact it has on me, as opposed to it being a fact. This is my perception because my perception is mine, and we are all entitled to have our perception. We are all entitled to our own feelings and our own way to process. But that doesn't mean that what I'm seeing or saying is a fact. It is just the way that I am interpreting it and the selective perception that I'm applying to it. And I think that can make a difference too. Not all circumstances, like the dishwasher, really lends to that, but
I feel that you did this wrong.
I know.
Yeah, you were right. Usually those I feel statements, I statements in general, like, yes, help to, kind of correct the conversation. And it's kind of interesting because I think our generation and younger have somewhere in social media or somewhere along the lines, I think we got much better messaging about how to do that versus our
Yeah.
parents.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, just
The EQ of our generation is largely a lot stronger. And I was actually talking to somebody else about this past weekend. If you think about it, many of our parents were raised by people who served overseas. Like men were largely distracted. They were raised to be like the tough guys. They didn't talk about emotion. Many of them were very emotionally scarred from what they experienced, what they went through, Great Depression. Like there was all this other stuff. So our parents were raised by a tough as nails generation. So it made, because they weren't getting that level of affection and emotional exposure, we were having to essentially figure that out on our own. And because we were hyper aware that it was absent, we are therefore hyper aware and making sure it gets infused into the way that we care for our families. So I
Yes.
think there really is like some generational damage control we've been doing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is. I always joke about the fact that like my father-in-law is ex-military and has a really scary job even to this day, despite being 75 years old. My mother-in-law is milk and cookies and sunshine and rainbows, and the two of them together are absolutely hysterical because she has all the emotions all the time. And she will also tell you she's Italian and she's allowed to have these things. And my father-in-law has no emotion, which I personally find to be delightful, like observing between the two of them. It's a phenomenal case study about how my husband got to be the way he is.
Yeah.
He leans more towards rainbows and sunshines, which is great. But yeah, I think we have a better EQ, and trying to teach our kids that, like, it's going to be really interesting to see what they are like as adults, like how they work with their friends, what their relationships look like. I'm definitely really excited to actually watch it because I think, we're doing such a better job raising better humans. And I know the world seems dark and scary and it's all horrible, but I think that's just a bias of watching the news.
Yeah, agreed. Oh, agreed. Exactly. I do know, Rick Steves. There we go. I don't
Yeah.
know why that took me so long. So Rick Steves wrote a book, if you haven't read it, called Traveling as a Political Act. And the point of his book is like, kind of where we are with Iran right now. The Iranian people are not bad people. They're like, the two countries can disagree on policy, but that doesn't mean Americans as humans are bad or Iranians as humans are bad. If we were to sit down over dinner with one of the, like, yes, terrorists exist. Yes, bad people can exist. Bad people can exist anywhere. So his point was like, when you take the time to get to know somebody, and it's kind of full circle to where we started this. When you take the time to get to know somebody, it's amazing how much connection you can find in ways that are often over dramatized by clickbait type media.
Yes, 100%. I think, just again, looking at that in our own relationships, if you start actively looking for how connected you guys really are, how, where you could add a sprinkle in a little bit more, and then being really just like, okay, I got 10 touches in today. Like, your own little world will improve dramatically in terms of hormones that you're going to be producing, the stress level in the house, the way that you guys feel about each other, towards each other, the way you handle conflict, it all ties together. And then ultimately sends you out in the world being a better human, in my opinion.
Yeah. So my last question was for you. I think you might have even just answered, was around like, okay, for the listener who's hearing and seeing and like, okay, nodding along to us, what could they do? Like, what's one really easy thing they could do in the next 24 hours? Like 10 touches feels like a very concrete goal.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me that was too much. Okay.
No. I mean, like, it does feel like a lot to me, but I like a goal is inherently something that we do not hit now. So it's just something to work towards.
And 10 touches, I don't mean like full on trying to make out with your spouse 10 times a day. I am like talking like, okay, can I give them that face to face hug? Can I touch their arm? Like, and I'm like gripping my own arm, as none of you can see me doing this. But when you're if you are female, gripping your male partner, make sure you're gripping pretty decently. Because men are tougher skinned, the right word, I'm not sure. They need a little bit more physicality. That's what I'm going with. So lean into it a little bit more because it will actually register in their brains better. Sit next to him on the couch, like, so that your thighs are touching. These are the ways to add in those 10 touches that are really simple. And then if you're paying attention to that, you're like, oh, look at that. I got to 10 today. Like, super proud of myself. Like, I could do that again tomorrow. That's not too hard. I got 3 in the morning, 3 in the evening, and like 3 before bed. Like, we're almost there. Like, yeah.
As with everything that I talk about, it's just you're building an intentional life. Like you are choosing by doing that, by going after 10, you are choosing your marriage as a priority because you do value it. And because you do value it and you do prioritize it, you are putting energy into making it successful. And it's that intention that allows us to get to a place where we feel really good and aligned with what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to feeling like we're constantly out of control or our life feels chaotic, because you just do feel so good about the way that you're spending your energy each day. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for a really meaningful conversation. I mean, it's timely for me given where the milestones that I'm hitting in my own relationship now, but I also just know that so many of my listeners are feeling just tired. So this is like, very practical quality ways that people can keep the love alive. So moving on quickly before we drop to the lightning round questions I ask every guest. The first is, what is your go-to stress busting activity?
Oh gosh. Right now we have just recently gotten ourselves back on the exercise train. So we had to get really hard on ourselves. And so we hired a very mean human that makes me lift heavy weights. He's actually a delight. His name is Josh. He's very kind, but he does make me lift heavy weights. And funny enough, the heavier the weight, the less stress I feel. So we've been doing that. And we actually do it together. 3 times a week. So that's actually one of our connected periods of time is lifting heavy weights.
Yeah, that's Richard and I do the same thing 3 times a week. We work out with a trainer, and when I get a 10 in, watch your husband do like lift some heavy stuff and go get an ass slap. Like that'll do it.
Yes.
Like good for you.
100%.
You'll rack up some Tim real fast.
Yeah.
What's the last book or podcast you loved?
So I was thinking about this actually, and it has nothing to do with my like professional life or kid life or anything, but I love Shannon McKinstry. I believe she's actually in North Carolina. She's just seems like a delightful human. Her podcast is good content. So she is actually talking about like how to post on social media, which is something I've just sort of really gotten into or trying to do myself. They're super short. They're 10 minutes. It's just her being fun. She just seems like a delightful human. So I actually just really like listening to her.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
You want to be, yeah. Okay, I will look her up. And then last, if you could wave a magic wand, what task would you eliminate forever?
Oh dear God. The dogs generally, I love them so much. I'm looking at one again. I love them so much, but they do horrible things to my floors on a very consistent basis. They're French bulldogs, and they don't care to usually go out on the grass. They usually like to use one of my rugs. And so if I could
No.
make that stop, somebody send me tips, because it is horrible. And I thought I was done cleaning up fluids when the children like finally used the bathroom all on their own, but no, I've just made it worse for myself and got 3 dogs, and here we all are.
Oh, I feel for you. Oh man, that's unfortunate. Like, what else can you say, right? Okay, and then last, how can people reach you?
Okay, so you can find me at on Instagram at Steph Flood Marriage Coach. The content there, just so we're all clear, it's a little bit more geared towards men. So don't get scared away. We're kind of working towards being a little bit more equalized. But you can get a hold of me there because you can DM me there. Or if you just want to send me an email, ask me questions, find out more about like what I talk about and how I talk about it. It's at stephfloodoflove.com or at gmail.com.
Perfect. Well, Stephanie, thank you again for being here. And thanks listeners for tuning in. As I mentioned, I will drop the table topics link so you can look that up, order those on Amazon. They're like $20, best purchase for your family and for your marriage. Just so easy to keep that relationship alive. I will also link episode 62 with Brian Page on why your relationship's home management systems might be breaking down. But until next time, friends, if nobody's told you lately, you're doing a great job. You've got this, mama. If today's conversation resonated, episode 62 with Brian Page is a natural next step. We spent today talking about how to stay emotionally connected when life gets full. But in Brian's episode, we go deeper on the operational side of partnership, as in how do you actually divide the mental load and invisible labor and run the home like a business, but in a way that doesn't leave one person holding the entire operating manual alone? It's one of my favorite episodes and it's linked right below.